Hello and welcome everyone to episode 20 of the IIT India Digital Conversations. I hope all of you are doing well and keeping safe. Today's session has been curated by the IIT Future of Mobility and Transport, or the FOMT Focus Panel, and it's about registration of electric vehicles or EVs without pre-fitted batteries, the opportunities and road ahead. Now, the new policy announcement by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways is intended to work towards wider adoption of the EVs across the country. As per the policy, the upfront cost of the electric vehicle or the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers would be a lot cheaper compared to the internal combustion engines due to the sale and registration of electric vehicles without batteries. This move is likely to boost the battery swapping industry as well. Now, the move comes after the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways received representation from the industry to de-link the cost of the battery, which accounts for roughly 30 to 40% of the total cost from the vehicle cost. The prototype of the electric vehicle and the battery, the regular battery or the swappable battery, is however required to be type approved by the test agencies. But has the EV industry welcomed the announcement wholeheartedly? Do manufacturers fear losing out on the subsidy? Is there resentment in the EV industry that MORTH did not work with the Department of Heavy Industries before taking such a huge step? These are some of the questions we will try to take up during the discussion today. And like always, we have the best set of experts from the industry who would also talk about the opportunities and road ahead for the EV industry and the ecosystem. I am Suman Bhaumik, your host for the series, and I lead the events development for the IIT in India. Now with this, I would want to thank all the speakers for being with us today. And seeing where you have all joined us from, I have a feeling this is going to be an intense and exciting match between Gurugram and Bengaluru. And with that, I shall ask our captain, Mustafa Wajid, to start the match, while I now hide backstage until you gents need me again. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Suman. And as we say in Bengaluru, Yellarigu Namaskara, and welcome to this program. Suman has given an IPL analogy. But I think we are all playing on the same team, so I don't think that we're going to be batting and bowling against each other. So the government decision to allow vehicles, two-wheelers and three-wheelers to be sold without batteries is a very intriguing and very interesting decision. India is largely a two-wheeler and three-wheeler country. If we look at the overall vehicles on the road, we find that almost 80% plus are two-wheelers, and if I add the three-wheelers, it goes to probably 85%. There is a reason for this, which I don't have to explain. All of us know our socio-economic conditions. And we also know that most of these vehicles, or almost all of them, hitherto have been petrol, or in the case of three-wheelers, we have also seen the CNG type of vehicles. We have also seen some diesel-operated three-wheeler vehicles in the northern parts of India, and so on. Now, moving towards electric mobility is no longer an idea for discussion. It's an idea whose time has come, and we are moving in that direction. Those of us who are familiar with North Indian cities would have recognized it maybe 2-3 years ago when we all have used e-rickshaws either in Delhi, Jaipur, Lucknow and many of the North Indian cities. We haven't seen them in the south, but they are very ubiquitous in many of the North Indian cities. So electric mobility has been already part of our life. If you look at the rail metro, it runs on electricity. So that is also part of e-mobility. If we look at Indian railways, one of the objectives of the Indian railways is 100% electrification, whether for passenger or freight traffic. That is also e-mobility. But now we are now looking at a segment which affects a very large percentage of the population of our country, both as consumers and also as businesses, because a lot of delivery operations today are happening using two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And this is because of the growth of the e-commerce sector, the growth of food delivery, and the growth of ride sharing. All these combined together have created a new volume of vehicle usage in this market. There are today on the panel experts from each of these domains. There is also a very provocative subject which we will take up in the later part of the panel, that if we are going to have vehicles, two-wheelers and three-wheelers sold without batteries, and batteries will be provided as a service or energy as a service, are we likely to see the re-emergence of the STD booth business model, particularly in tier 2 and tier 3 and smaller cities of India or towns which do not have metros, rail metros, which don't have adequate bus services. So these are issues that are very interesting. However, I would like to caution everybody that we must remember that we are a very cost sensitive country because our cost of finance is high when compared to other countries which are developed. Therefore, as Indians, all of us are conscious about trying to reduce the first cost of buying anything. We will do a lot of research. We will look at the shops in the street. We will do research on the internet. We will ask half a dozen friends before making an important purchase decision of anything which is significant. The same is the attitude will not change. You and I and all of us, we have this DNA, and I would call it the Indian DNA, for want of a better word. So one thing is very clear, that if the vehicles are sold without batteries, the price of the vehicle to the consumer comes down significantly below petrol vehicles or even maybe CNG powered vehicles. The percentage of difference can be significant. Before starting this panel discussion, we were just exchanging some thoughts. The percentage difference in a two-wheeler could be anywhere between 20 to 30% cheaper than what it is today. Let me put a number on it. The typical two-wheeler petrol costs about 75,000 rupees after the BS6 implementation on road. Taxes, RTO, registration, insurance, everything included. I am told that the electric vehicle without the battery may be 30% cheaper or 25% cheaper. So that is something that would appeal to a lot of us as Indians to go and look at this subject seriously. But how do I fuel this scooter? In the today's context, yes, when I buy a two-wheeler, I know that there is a petrol bunk. So obviously I have to know that there is some service which will provide me the battery. Will this happen? What will be its cost? Can it be cheaper than petrol? These are issues that we will discuss today. And also, let us remember that the STD booth business model created employment for lakhs and millions of people in India. It was able to provide enough livelihood per STD booth to support a full family in terms of income. The pandemic is still around us. We hope that it is reducing. Employment is a serious challenge. I see the move of the government not just from a mobility perspective, but also it, I think, has great potential to increase the amount of employment in the mobility space. Having said this, let me now hand over. We will start this. We will have a three-part discussion today. To begin with, we will request our good friend Sanjeev Ponnuswamy from Ampere Electric. They are one of the leading electric two-wheeler manufacturers. They have been around for a very long time. I happen to know the original promoters, and now this company is a subsidiary of Greaves Cotton, which is a listed company on the stock exchange in Mumbai, and they are growing very well. Sanjeev comes from a different background. He has entered the mobility area after coming from the telecom and the ICT background, so to speak. So I think he brings a very fresh perspective to this subject. So we will hear him and get a perspective from the OEM side, after which we will open up the discussion on two parts. One is opportunities, during which it will be a round robin format where each of the panelists will be given a select amount of time of 3 minutes to articulate the views on what is the opportunity and what are the challenges maybe to be overcome. And then we go to the third part of the discussion, which is how do we see the road ahead? And each panelist will share his vision, not only about the strategy part, the ecosystem part, but very important in India, the cost part. Will I be able to use my vehicle cheaper than what I would be if I am running it with petrol? Whether it's a consumer or a fleet application, this question is paramount. With this brief background, I thank you all the delegates for registering and attending. I'm sure we will have an exciting session. With this brief background, sorry I took a little longer than I thought. Over to you, Sanjeev.
So as Mustafa rightly said, India is the largest, predominantly largest two-wheeler market in the world. We're talking about give or take 15 to 20 million two-wheeler sales every year, barring a couple of months due to COVID, where China had overtaken as the largest two-wheeler player. Broadly, we are the largest two-wheeler market in the world, and so is the three-wheeler. Now, that gives a great opportunity to see how we can bring in EVs. And I think Mustafa also outlined it really well. Whether it's ICE or whether it's EVs, the first and foremost thing, it has to fit into the pocket and the mind share of customers in India. 90% of two-wheeler buyers are looking at products ex-showroom between 50 to 70,000. Therefore, whether you go to electric or you stay in the IC world, it should be within the affordable price bracket. Now, there are two key points here. One is there is I mean, predominantly in India, personal mobility is all about two-wheelers because four-wheeler space is still very small. We talk about 2 to 3 million or 4 million four-wheelers selling every year versus a 15 to 20 million of two-wheelers. And that also means 60% of the petrol consumption in the country is by two-wheelers. And India has other challenges. 85% of crude oil imports, I mean, we're dependent on imports, and that's in excess of 100 plus billions of dollars despite the crude oil crashing in pricing. So very clearly the government is also bullish, and I think we're seeing that in many fronts, whether it's the MORTH or whether it's the DHI or whether it's Niti Aayog. Every function is bullish to push the EV adaptability in the adoption in the country, and that acceleration is definitely going to happen. Now, another very interesting aspect to this whole thing is 14 plus large states have come forward with innovative statewide sort of packages to encourage electric mobility, which is very encouraging, which you don't see in any part of the other or anywhere in the world. You get a TN state coming forward and saying we would give road tax and registration at zero cost for say till 2022. We have the Delhi government that has come forward and giving a 5,000 rupee per kilowatt hour, which means scooter prices will come down at least by 8 to 10,000 rupees beyond whatever the FAME 2 subsidy is. So each state is coming with interesting proposals. Bangalore is talking about setting, and overall you have a $4.6 billion of government support on advanced battery manufacturing. But in terms of the charge units for electric vehicles or facilitating the growth of charging stations, all states are looking very bullish. And if you just try to add all of that, clearly in the next 5 years, which means from now to 2025, give or take, whether it's the central authorities or it's the state governments, they're all talking about 25% of overall two-wheelers or three-wheelers to become electric, give or take. Some states have more ambitions, some states have less, but this is what it is. And even us as electric players, we are seeing a great progress because this electric scooter is adapting really fast. 40% of the two-wheelers today are more or less scooters. And we are seeing it, the opportunity from two fronts. One, on the personal mobility. At least 200 plus cities and towns have been showing great response and progress. Some of us are seeing 50% higher daily run rates in retail versus pre-COVID. That clearly shows the two-wheeler and the electric mobility is getting adopted. Not just because it's good for the environment. Of course, an electric vehicle brings down the CO2 emissions by 37%, but it is because it's affordable and it also is giving great performance. I mean, electric scooters today or bikes today are excellent in performance. You get good torque, it's comfortable. So personal mobility is definitely rushing forward. And on the other front, there is an interesting aspect of the B2B players. Like Mustafa said, we are seeing e-tailing business going from, say, $30 billion now to at least 5x to about $140 billion or so in the next 5 years. We are seeing this food delivery business, especially after all this pandemic, going from a mere 2 billion to 12 billion in next 4 to 5 years. We are also seeing rideshare business. Some of the surveys in the top cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai shows 38 to 40% of the respondents are ready to give up personal mobility for rideshare. And that's also a great benefit for players like, say, an Amazon or a Flipkart or a Domino's Pizza or all restaurant houses, because your cost of last mile delivery sharply comes down. Of course, in personal mobility, it is almost 1/10. In B2B, because of various other factors, it's slightly more, but it's still significantly cheaper than running a petrol scooter. And the overall government framework, whether it's Atmanirbhar Bharat ka localization push or the startups that are coming up in the battery space, we are seeing a great progress in the industry. And we hope that it's all going to come together, because one side, the state government and the central government, as well, the authorities like MORTH and Niti Aayog and DHI. On the other side, all of these battery manufacturers and electric players are pushing this forward really fast. So we see a great opportunity here. Yes, Mustafa.
Sanjeev, I would like you to comment on how do you see, as an electric vehicle manufacturer, do you welcome this decision of the government to allow batteries to be sold separately or provided separately and the vehicle to be sold without the battery? And how do you see it evolving? First, do you welcome it? And if so, what are the opportunities and the challenges ahead?
Of course, we welcome the move, because it's going to help B2B fleet operators to have battery swaps, and of course cover their needful range for the day, etc. Anyone who wants to have 200 kilometers in a day or 300 kilometers a day, this is going to be very beneficial. Having said that, there's a lot of work to be done. The MORTH has obviously given the directions forward, including to transport authorities for the farms or DHI, etc., that the battery can be separately sold. However, when it comes to DHI or FAME2, they need to recognize how this can be built. There's an aspect of testing. There's an aspect of homologation. Still, the batteries have to be homologated by the test agencies, even if it's not fitted at the plant. Now that requires standardization. The AIS standards for that is still not out. That will leave anxiousness in terms of various kinds of battery connectors, some proprietary connectors without a unified system. That may cause difficulties. There's a lot of implementation to be done. Overall, it's a great move, but it will also help to bring down the initial purchase price of the vehicle, like you rightly said, by 25-30%, which is great. Having an on-road price close to 45 or 50,000 is a great aspect. But we'll have to see how the whole industry puts together, along in partnership with the AIS for prescriptions, etc., setting up the standards for the batteries.
Yeah, Sanjeev, I get a sense that while you are positive about this as a company that is making electric scooters and electric vehicles, there seems to be also a certain amount of, I would say, friction about this idea. There are sections of the automotive industry which are not completely convinced about it. And obviously, the automotive industry needs to sort of align itself in a little more cohesive fashion. What do you have to say about that?
I think the concerns from OEMs would definitely be across the execution of this, because you can't have different sizes and formats of batteries and connectors. You can't, have multiple variants of products, because this has to be homologated right at the creation of the product. So, an absence of a standard and presence of multiple different types of batteries, voltage ratings, connectors is creating a lot of anxiousness to OEMs, because you can't bring out products for every single. So you can't have one vehicle that's for an X battery and another vehicle for another battery, right? So I think that's the major problem. While the government moved really fast in setting the note to it, but what about the AIS standards? That has to be set right. That's the biggest concern that we are seeing. The automotive industry standards are not there for charging stations, rather especially for battery swap stations or battery connectors to unify it. Even today we see, of course, the good news is later we'll have some of the speakers talk about it. There are advanced stage of battery swap solutions by some of the players. This is already happening, but it's happening in a haphazard manner, and that's going to be very difficult for both the battery or the charging infrastructure provider as well as the vehicle provider, and for the customer too. So that's what's creating the anxiousness.
Would I be right in saying that one of the primary challenges is standardization across the ecosystem?
the GST, it's different between you sell the battery with the vehicle, it's 5%, you sell it without the vehicle, is 18%. That's a huge cost difference. Or the FAME 2 subsidy, there is lack of clarity on how that subsidy will pass on if the battery is not sold with the vehicle. I think these two are pretty large components that can displace and transfer the pressure onto the charging infrastructure providers, who in turn would have problems in terms of pricing the ride per kilometer. I think you made a right point. Today, compared to a petrol vehicle, the electric vehicle has lower riding economics. Now that should not get displaced by this new business model.
Thank you, Sanjeev, for that. It was a very interesting perspective. So, Goldie, this decision of the government to allow batteries to be used or provided separately and reducing the first cost of the vehicle as a consequence, we'd like to hear your views on that, and how will it impact fleet operations, how will it help, and how will it be useful in bringing down the total cost of ownership.
Thank you, Mustafa Ji, for having me on this session. Thank you, IT. Good afternoon to everyone joining this session remotely. Hopefully, you all are keeping safe in these troubled times. I would say exciting times in the same breath. Exciting because while on one side, I think our personal and professional lives have been battered by this unprecedented pandemic, but as far as electric space is concerned in the country, it seems that the government has been taking, and not just central government, but different state governments, right, have been taking significant steps. Specific to the subject of discussion today about the MoRTH notification on delinking the sale of vehicles and the batteries, I will give my comments in two parts. First is the idea and the solution. And as we all know and agree, I think as a country, I think we have great visionary leaders, and we are good with ideas. And I think the notification from the Ministry of Road Transport is a very bold idea. It's not an unheard idea, by the way. Right? I've spent many years working on the aerospace industry and defense industry. And if you really look at what happens in the aerospace industry, also something very similar. When an operator like an Indigo or an Air India or a Vistara goes to buy a plane from, say, Boeing or Airbus, the planes and the engines, incidentally, are sold as two different choices. So airlines do have certain choices in terms of what engines they want onto the plane. Obviously, the choices are not too many, right? There's a very limited set of choices, but the choices are there. And this is an industry which is, it's a very, very high tech, one of the most high tech, one of the most complex engineering industries with safety and security issues that are perhaps most unprecedented across many other industries. So, but it's a concept that works, right, for the aviation industry. But the way that construct works is that there's a huge amount of regulation, there's a huge amount of standardization, huge amount of certification, tests, and all of that, right? Which is what brings us to the second point, which is execution. So, as an idea, the fact that the government is now promoting the delinking of vehicles with the battery, I think it's a great idea. It allows for a lot of flexibility, as Sanjeev was mentioning earlier, for a lot of fleet operators, and then with B2B usages wherever they are applicable. I think it allows for greater flexibility for the end user to decide what kind of a battery pack they want, what kind of range they want, do they want battery swapping? If yes, what kind of capacity, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a really, really good move to help promote, I would say, the adoption of electric mobility, specifically the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, which is where majority of the country essentially moves today. The trick lies in the execution, right? Like with everything else in this country, you pick up any idea of the last 50, 60 years, I would say they all are great ideas at the root of it. The problem happens in execution. And I think, and again, Sanjeev alluded to this in detail, how are we going to address standardization? How are we going to address, safety issues? How are we going to address, after sales service? How are we going to address consumer experience? And the elephant in the room is pricing. Who is going to control the pricing, right? Now, if you take a step back 3, 4, 5 years ago, and even today, right, for majority of us who use either bikes or cars or something else, the fuel pricing is determined between state and the central governments. right? No third party has any say whatsoever by and large, right? And if we are talking about, transforming or, moving all of or majority of countries' mobility to electric, then the question is who controls that pricing, right? And is it, or different suppliers will create their own ecosystem, and within the walled garden they will control their pricing. So I think those are questions that I don't believe enough discussions have been had, enough thought has been given to. But like with everything else, as a country, we know how to figure this out as we go along. So it's not surprising, or what we're doing, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. It's a step in the right direction, a good idea, much needed, will help, I think, the industry in large, and I think we will figure it out as we go along.
Thank you for that. So, if I have understood you right, correct me if I'm missing out something, Goldie, is that you believe that the foundational issue of execution is going to be determining the success of how this plays out. And there seem to be at least four key pillars on which this execution depends. One would be regulations and standardization. One would be safety. One would be the consumer, or rather the pricing part, as how this pricing will happen. And the last one would be the user or the consumer experience. So today with the digitalization, this user and consumer experience has also become a very important issue. But at the same time, it's also become easier to manage because there is much more transparency and use of cloud-based management systems in the whole activity. So is that a correct understanding of what you said?
Absolutely, absolutely, Mustafaji. That's precisely. I think those four tenets would really get to decide how the adoption happens, right? I think the idea is a very solid one, and you're right. I think mobile phone is actually a brilliant example, right? Look at what happens in the US, where the mobile phones by and large are mated to a carrier, right? In India, we took a decision that look, they need to be delinked, right? And then look at the way it propagated across the country, wherein almost every citizen, at least on paper, has a mobile phone or a mobile connection. So I think as a country, we know how to really scale up, some of these things. And I think if we address those four issues, which we believe we are in good position of addressing it, I think this can actually become a very, very big, trigger, to really drive adoption for electric. I will only leave a caveat that, obviously the policy is also on two-wheelers and three-wheelers. I think it will really work for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Right now, I don't think we can stretch it to say that it will work for buses and cars and all of that. Though China is demonstrating, interestingly, that it can also work for cars, but we'll see how we get to that point as well.
Yeah, thank you. The move by the Indian government, Guru, is a very unusual move for a country of this size, where there are more than 180 million two-wheelers on the road, and probably maybe more than 10 or 15 million three-wheelers on the road. How do you see this evolving? You come with a very different perspective. Bosch is one of the largest automotive, in the automotive domain, one of the largest organizations. So how do you see this happening, and what is it that we can learn from experiences around the world to make this happen and succeed, with the challenges that Goldie very articulately pointed out on the execution side and the four pillars, that is the things that were specifically mentioned on regulation, standards, pricing, safety, as well as the whole consumer experience bit. Over to you, Guru.
Thank you, Mustafa, and I hope I can keep it realistic again today. So, my best to answer some of the things you brought up. What I have the advantage of is an excellent introduction from Sanjeev and Goldie. So both of them spoke extremely well and covered very, very wide area of what this kind of a legislation could bring for us. So I think it's a very good context that they've set. So if we simply switch back to who's going to buy this vehicle, it's going to be the consumer, the owner of the vehicle. What does he look at? Basically, he looks at the cost of the vehicle. Cost of the vehicle is a parameter which can be looked at either in terms of cost per kilometer or in terms of total cost of ownership. it can also be looked at in the perspective of the sticker price. What do I have to pay upfront, and how do I take care of those costs? So it's cost is a combination of these factors. An electric vehicle buyer would also be anxious about the range, because today, while most traditional two-wheeler owners who use a combustion vehicle may never need the kind of range a two-wheeler provides, like it has 10 liters of petrol, it runs 400 kilometers. So that's not a range they effectively would probably want to use on a day-to-day basis. But there is some kind of range anxiety. So that's something that definitely comes with it. An EV buyer now and also in the future, also the government, which is actively promoting this, is doing it for a green cause. So definitely lowering pollution is an absolute necessity, and a lot of work has gone into showing that two-wheelers contribute significantly to pollution. So far with the BS6, I think it's coming down significantly, but yeah, two-wheelers have been a major contributor. So I would say these are three key things, and there could be different ways of addressing this with regard to business models, which can take care of how and what we provide to a consumer to make all this happen. And I believe personally, business models will always coexist. OEMs continue to sell pre-fitted batteries, and that's been the way the market has developed so far, and this will continue. So there is no stopping of that with this legislation or without that. Of course, swapping is a key element which is coming in, especially very, very efficient in the context of two and three wheelers. I think Goldie talked about it. It can be done with relatively little effort, with no big technology backbone at the back, and in terms of physical exchange of batteries can also be implemented pretty easily. So it's a relatively easy to implement swapping solution. Takes care of the range anxiety issues, so there I think it is also possible, provided we have enough swap infrastructure across town. You can easily take care of that. Of course, you can have leasing, so batteries can be leased to bring down upfront costs, or do other financial jugglery to make this work. So leasing is certainly an option, and it has been tried out in several countries. A lot of them have a leasing option, both at a vehicle level and at a battery level. The recent notification from the government through MORTH is definitely a variant of the swapping model, as I can call it. It basically decouples the vehicle from the battery, takes away the burden of having the battery cost pre-packaged with a vehicle, and gives the flexibility to the user to sort of get a vehicle at a much cheaper cost than maybe even today's combustion engine vehicle, and then bring in a battery, provided the infrastructure is there to support him throughout the city. It comes with its own set of limitations in terms of how this can be used, where it can be used. For example, if I live in Delhi, and I have a swapping infrastructure, and I'm able to use the vehicle, but I want to drive to Agra, or I want to drive somewhere out of Delhi, and there is no infrastructure, then I'm still worried about it. But 80% of day-to-day use cases could be met easily with this kind of an infrastructure. So I would say these would be the areas where definitely it starts to make sense, and a decoupled model could provide a lot of opportunities. Throws up quite some challenges, like other speakers have said, but I would say not challenges which cannot be solved. I think these are definitely solvable challenges, be it on standardization, be it on safety. Anyway, the homologation happens with the battery, so I don't see that as a big complication there. in terms of performance. So there are definitely challenges at the system level, but they are certainly solvable.
Yeah, thank you, Guru. I think that's a very interesting perspective and insight where we are talking of business models for energy as a service. It could be via leasing, it could be via per kilometer or per unit of time, and so on and so forth. But before I let you go, Guru, you and I both have a fairly good understanding of the situation in rural side, at least in Karnataka, because both of us hail from here.
Yeah.
In many of the mobility discussions, I find that most of the discussion is happening which is very city centric and particularly large city centric. That's probably because most of the panelists and people like you and me live in these cities and we are closer to the issues that are involved in there. But can you also spend a minute to highlight what can be the impact of this policy, let us say at the district headquarter level and the, I would say, intra-district level. There are taluk headquarters. In south we call them taluka, and I think in north they have some other term for it. But one district consists of several taluks, and these are typically small towns. They may have 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 1 lakh population. Now, intra-district movement is a big challenge, and we all know that mobility has an economic impact. If you are able to provide good mobility solutions, the chance that you will improve your life is much higher because you will probably end up doing more things. So today I see electricity, mobility and connectivity to the internet as life-changing equations. Yeah, in the good old days when we were students, people used to talk about roti, kapda or makan. While this is absolutely necessary, there is no disputing that. I think we have one more layer on top of it, which is now electricity. We can call it bijli for convenience. Mobility, I don't know what is the right word. I don't want to use the Kannada word because I don't know where the audience is coming from. But connectivity. So, how will this decision, how, in your opinion, impact the part of India which is away from the big urban agglomerations?
Okay, I don't have too much of research to back this up, but I can give you a perspective based on use cases. So if you look at rural user in a small town setting, I think the possibility of setting up infrastructure, getting this going in a smaller town is far easier. As soon as you have a good number of people this kind of a service, the vehicle cost goes down in a big way. Buying power is easily manageable, so more people are likely to subscribe to a vehicle without a battery. But the additional infrastructure to offer as a service or energy as a service in whatever model be technically easier set up in a smaller town, because maybe you need 3 in a small town and then you're fully done. But I'm not really very sure today whether the overall economics of this makes sense, because I've not on that to, or we have not done any work on that to say. We know that in a large town, swaps per day going through maybe 100 kilometers of usage per day per vehicle. So I think one of the speakers talked about fleet usage. So, also e-commerce and deliveries, which Sanjeev talked about. These are all heavy daily runtime use cases, and these are very, very good for us. But if I am in a small town and I drive only 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers a day, would it be really beneficial for me to do it, or would I stay with other modes of movement? So this is something that needs to be looked into in depth, and I wouldn't make an economic guess right now.
Thank you for that. I still believe that that's an opportunity which is yet to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
I would strongly recommend young people who are on this audience and also who probably might hear about this through other channels to seriously look at creating business models which can be relevant in the hinterland of India. As we can see, what has the pandemic taught us? The pandemic has taught us that urban India got crippled and the economic growth rate dipped. whereas rural India was able to withstand the pandemic much better. And the only sector of economy in India that has grown in the last 6 months is actually in the hinterland of India. So I think that there is a larger message in that. Having heard all this, now we come to, I would say, my friend Avadesh, who probably has the maximum experience in India about analyzing, evaluating, and deploying and determining how this whole business of charging as a service. He may not have done physical battery swapping in his organization, maybe done it at a pilot level, but I think that the experience of charging as a service, which will obviously be energy as a service if the battery gets included, will come to bear in this decision along with this decision of government. So with this, I would request Avdesh to share his thoughts on this.
Yeah. So before I share what could be the cost of operations for per kilometer for an individual customer, I would like to give some views what we believe about the battery swapping as a concept itself. So clearly, as other co-panelists have indicated, that the battery swapping is considered to be a good viable propositions for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. But then I would go further deep, and then I would like to first share our views that why the battery swapping concept is at all debated and why it is required. Because we all know that globally, and primarily it was in the four-wheeler segment, that the company have gone bankrupt, ideating on the battery swapping itself. And Better Place is the well-known example that they invested almost $1 billion and got bankrupt. But then we have, on the other side, we have a Gogoro example as well, in the two-wheeler segment, which is successfully demonstrating the battery swapping. But when we talk of the battery swapping on the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, we should also be mindful that first of all, we are talking about the lithium-ion battery. We are not talking about the lead-acid battery. That is very important from the consumer point of view to understand, because when we talk of the EV, because in India, when you say the EV sales was 152,000 or 160,000, it also includes the lead-acid battery. So here we are talking about the lithium-ion battery, and so there are two components or two elements which decides that why should we go for the battery swapping. Primarily, one is the cost, because we believe that it is constituting around 45 to 50% of the overall vehicle cost, and also the timing, that the battery swapping will give flexibility in timing, that you can have a 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, you can charge the vehicle, and then you can start running again. So when we talk of the cost, then we should be aware that the battery cost is falling substantially, and the learning rate, I believe, that is around 15 to 20% year on year. And so that is a very important element to consider, because today when we are talking of now, and now the battery cost is making the vehicle cost very high. But imagine when the battery cost itself will be much lower, what would be the preference of the individual customer. I'm not talking, that's why I'm dividing to two segments. One is the individual customer, one is the fleet customer in two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Fleet customers would always have a better probability or possibility of opting for the battery swapping, because they will, in any time, they will have a better TCO. Even if the battery cost comes down, even then they will have a more requirement for a lesser time in the charging. So the fleet operator would continue to opt for the battery swapping. But as far as individual customer is concerned, I don't know. I don't have any data. I don't know. Neither I have seen any data in India where any consumer survey has been done, that what is the preference of the individual two-wheelers drivers, that what do they want. Because what I believe as a consumer, that when you pay 50,000, 60,000, 1 lakh rupees for a mobile or for a vehicle, or 10 lakh rupees for a car, you become very possessive about that asset. And nothing can be better than the vehicle itself, that when you are driving a new brand vehicle, and if somebody scratches, rubs along your vehicle, you get irritated, furiated. Why? Because you have attached yourself with the ownership of that vehicle, and that is very critical factor in the consumer behavior. So when the individual will put in 50,000, 60,000 rupees in the vehicle, and if they are not sure which battery they are using, what is the quality of that battery. So when the vehicle cost, when the battery cost will come down, I I believe, and that the individual would prefer to have a battery fitted in the vehicle itself, because then the cost of the overall cost of the vehicle would still be much affordable, because the battery cost will come down, and they will have a flexibility to charge anywhere, wherever they want. Because as Mustafa, you have also mentioned that the individual drivers runs only 600 to 700 kilometer on two wheelers in a year. So every day it's around 20 kilometer on average. So they can charge with a 15 amp socket, or any slow chargers anywhere, wherever they want. So I think that in the long term, the individual customers probably would not prefer a battery swapping, but the commercial fleet operators would always prefer to battery swapping in the two wheelers and three wheeler segment. Having said so, I believe once this battery is taken out from the vehicle and the vehicle cost comes down, and as some of the panelists have indicated that the vehicle cost would be a range of around 40 to 50,000, which will be lesser than the ICE vehicles, then you should compare, as a consumer, you would compare a vehicle and a battery as a, in ICE vehicle as a vehicle and the gasoline tank. Because in the gasoline tank, you fill in the gasoline and then you drive the vehicles. Similarly, in this EV, the battery is nothing but a gasoline tank full of energy, electrical energy. So if you are taking out that one, then the vehicle cost is much lower, and then a consumer should be willing to pay the operating cost which they are paying to the ICE vehicles. And why I'm saying so, because Suman, if you can bring the slide here at this stage. See, what is important from the battery swapping operator point of view is that, as an energy operator, what we would like, uh, see, there are different elements of the cost. So when we talk of the operating cost, as you can see on the screen, so electricity, cost of electricity, that's the variable cost, is just one component. The cost of battery itself is a larger component, because the battery has a finite life in the mobility, and over a period of time that battery has to be replaced, because otherwise it will not deliver the same amount of energy which it requires. Then there would be a fixed demand charges of electricity. Most of the time when we talk about the pricing, we only pick up only the cost of electricity, which is around 6 rupees on an average on the EV tariff, and then people are dividing it by 20-25 kilometer per kilowatt hour which the vehicle gives, then say that 20 paise to 30 paise per kilometer. But that's not the reality. From the operator point of view, if you see, we would be drawing electricity, that's true, that will be 20-30 paise per units per kilometer. But then the cost of battery, what will be the cost of the battery cell? Because the vehicle cost, which was comprising 50% of the battery, is now being taken out by the battery operator. So the cost has not gone down anywhere. The cost has been just passed on to the battery operator. Now battery operator has to recover that cost. So that will be an important component that occupies a significant amount of that. Then please imagine that when you are operating a battery swapping stations, then you have a huge amount of load connected there. And then you would be paying a fixed demand charges to the distribution company, which nobody takes into account. But as an operator, when we are taking a connections of 1 megawatt or 400 kilowatt, I'm paying a fixed demand charge. That's a huge charge, irrespective of whether it's being used or not. So that will be an important component. Similarly, there would be some person who would be managing the entire operating stations. There would be overhead cost, the software, and the network cost. So as a crude, I have not done a very detailed analysis, but I would say that broadly, based on our pilot which we are doing in DLF Mall of Noida, broadly it come around 1.6 to 1.7 rupees per kilometer, without going into the tax implications, the profitability and all. So broadly around 1.6 to 1.7 rupees per kilometer it will be for a battery swapping operator. But the catch is that the battery has to be a standard batteries. I mean, if you ask a battery operator to have a different set of battery for different OEMs, then this cannot fly, because then the utilization of the battery, each battery would be much lower, and the cost of the operations will be much higher.
Yeah, your view is that this will The swapping aspect will probably be more practical and welcome by fleet operators, which would be a controlled environment, and they see a lower total cost of ownership by doing that.
Yes, precisely. Because individual customer at any point of time will be very possessive about their assets, and they would like to have a full control.
Correct.
And you see in the consumer electronics and in the consumer durable segments, if you see, you will find that the trend is moving towards that direction. The mobile earlier was coming with a detachable battery. Now all mobiles, smartphones are coming with the fixed battery. It doesn't require to be, if something goes wrong with the mobile, the entire mobile has to be changed. You can't remove the battery. So this is probably from the consumer behavior perspective. That is where I believe the government of India is missing in the entire electric mobility scenario. The perception of the consumer, that is not being captured by any government agency. That is something missing. And I think that through this forum, if you can reach out to the Niti Aayog and ask them to have a nationwide survey done, that what the consumer wants, and then they decide all these kinds of policies and all issues, that will be much more sustainable and robust.
Yeah, thank you. And I tend to agree with you about the fact that battery prices will drop, and that will will have an impact on consumer behavior. But at the same time, I think your point about the fleet applications, which are rapidly growing, like Sanjeev outlined about how fast the e-commerce sector or the food delivery or the shared rides are growing, that's an area where this swapping might be of great interest to them because of the total cost of ownership. At the same time, I think it's very intriguing, that slide which you presented. I must thank you for that. I think for the first time in any discussion, there has been an actual, I would say, a portrayal of numbers and a breakup of what are the cost constituents of a swapping operation. And I think that the audience will go back a lot more educated and enlightened with it. I think the important point you made about energy charge and demand charge is a very critical aspect. Most of the time that gets missed. Also, I thought I was surprised by the size of the network cost that you put in, because I think the software and the cloud part is also being underestimated, in my opinion. If what you have indicated is realistic, because I believe so, because you have the direct experience of it.
Just a clarification here on the network and software cost. See, on the network and the software cost, as a battery swapping stations, what we will be requiring, we will not be developing the entire software platform. Basically, there would be a platform operator like Microsoft or someone, and then we will be taking the license for that one. That's why our operating cost on the network and software should not be much high as an operator.
Fine. So having said that, what we can clearly see is opportunity definitely in the area of fleets and commercial use of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So that's very clear that on the consumer side there could be this, but that brings me back to what Guru mentioned about multiple coexistence of different things in India. And India is a classical example of what we call quantum physics, where we have parallel universes coexisting at the same instant of time. And this is the hallmark of our country. Just to give you an example, within 1 kilometer of where I live, there is a South Indian restaurant which serves coffee at 10 rupees for a small cup of coffee. There is also Starbucks, which is just about 200 feet away from there, which serves coffee at about 200 rupees. And both of them are coexisting, and both of them are running reasonably well. So I think this is the kind of multiplicity that happens in India. Having said that, I think that we have raised a whole lot of issues here. So I'd like to just quickly come back to each one of you and request you to just share your perspective on how do you see the road ahead. Do you think that we are going to see an STD booth business model to cater to consumers? What kind of models do you see for fleet operators, whether it will be leasing, whether financing, what kind of energy as a service companies will emerge? And what is the opportunity for entrepreneurs and industry people in India to sort of expand or provide these services and grow in different directions? With this, I would request each of you to limit yourself to about 2 or 3 minutes because we have to open it up for question and answers. So with that, we will go back now to Goldie first, then come to Guru, and then to Avadesh. Over to you, Goldie.
Yeah, so I think on your point, will see an emergence of STD, both business model as far as battery swapping is concerned. I would say likely. I won't say quite likely because I think the business model that I see emerging is one which will mimic more of the setting up of private fueling stations, almost on the lines of what we have today as fuel stations, whether it's within the cities or outside the cities. I'm confident that you will see, mom and pop shops dealing with battery swapping systems around the country and cities. Now, and the reason for that essentially is because while it will get commoditized over a period of time, we still are talking about, handling a material or handling an asset that requires safe handling, that requires training, that requires very, very reliable power, that requires firefighting equipment, and so on and so forth. So I'm not fully confident that we may see a emergence of an STD, ISD, PCO model emerging for battery swapping. We will certainly see a very wide distributed model, but I think those would be run, essentially by a set of organized players, if you wish, right? I mean, locationally they could be there in nook and corner, but I think from just a pure management and operations of it, I believe would be done effectively not by individuals who just want to be an entrepreneur, but I think it will require a little bit more of a technical expertise as well. So that's just the view that we hold today. But India being India, not to be surprised, you has to be changed. A couple of years down the line.
Yeah, thank you for that, Goldie. So what you are saying is that you definitely see the possibility of fueling stations, but with electricity emerging, which are distinct from the petrol bunks.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe to some extent, mom and pop type of PCO or STD booth models also may come up, but time will tell as to which way this will go.
Yeah. And I think to get to that point, we need a tremendous degree of standardization protocols and all of that, which is not there today. So I think at least in the near term, I do not believe that approach is viable, for the larger, stakeholders also. I think we require, in the PCO and ISD, there was not too much to be done. It's a simple booth. There isn't much of a you're not dealing with battery chemistry. You're not dealing with inflammability. You're not dealing with any of those things, right? I understand where you are coming at it, but I think we'll see a different path being carried out.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, one of the reasons for asking that question is to provoke some different thinking. So one may agree, one may have different perspectives on it, but a very interesting perspective. Thank you for that, Goldie. And over to you, Guru. What do you think?
Okay, I think as a neutral technology agnostic provider we believe eventually the best technology and the most optimum cost structures for the consumers will always prevail. So that's something we will find an equilibrium. I think it's definitely possible based on draft has come out that a solution built around decoupled chassis and battery solution is certainly possibility. There are many things to solve, but I think it can be done. Look, if we take 20 million annual two-wheelers and assume in 2025 as a picture of the future, 10% of that to be converted to EVs. It's a vehicle of almost 2 million vehicles. 2 million vehicles will not be all of same. You will have them in multiple formats. You will have them doing different things for different reasons. It's certainly possible that fleet and other things which are more for economics-based business models will take precedence on things like decoupled vehicle and battery kind of a thing, and they will go. Eventually, I think India as a country, even if we take this 2 million vehicle conversion and assume 3 kilowatt hour of two-wheeler, it's like 6 gigawatt hour of energy capacity. And if you look at the size of that, takes a lot of partnership to come in, a lot of ecosystem players to get in, not just in terms of manufacturing, but also in terms of charging, in terms of vehicle. So it's going to be a humongous task even to get to make that kind of a number happen. So I would say the chance, I see a very fair chance that multiple business models exist.
Well articulated. I think opens up possibilities for other people to think of different ideas on how they can do deployments and do pilots. It's an interesting calculation what you did about 6 gigawatt hours. Just to put it in perspective, in India last year we generated about 1200 gigawatt hours. We are now the third largest producer of electricity in the world, and hoping to go much further than where we are today. It's also a fact that we are going aggressively on the renewable energy side, and we are talking of adding 430 gigawatts of renewable energy between now and 2030. So, electric vehicles powered from renewable energy, very ideal sounding thing. I think that India can show the way thanks to its advantage in two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So, the summary of today's discussion is that the government's idea is a good idea. There are execution challenges. There are, however, clear cases of use cases in fleet application where the economics of total cost of ownership can actually make this whole idea of keeping the battery outside the vehicle or decoupled, as Guru likes to say, and lower the total cost of ownership, thereby creating an opportunity for new companies to come up as service providers of doing this energy as a service activity, definitely for the commercial applications in e-commerce fleets, in food delivery fleets, and in shared delivery, shared ride fleets. So that's one clear indication. So those of us who want to pursue activities in that direction, that's very clear. I think there are also some very interesting ideas on leasing, financing, crowdsourcing, etc., to make this happen in a very different way. Maybe some new business models are needed for this to happen. But at the same time, I would caution everybody to remember what Guru and Goldie have highlighted in their own different ways, but converging on the fact that there has to be an economic value in the use case that has to be met. And whether it is the consumer side or the fleet side, that is something that is inviolable kind of fundamental. I think it's very encouraging to hear also from the panelists that there's a whole lot of technology available out there in India, a lot of indigenization happening as we speak. Sanjeev made a point of that during his presentation. So I think there's a very exciting prospect for anybody or any organization which wants to participate in this whole e-mobility movement, which is slowly becoming, in my opinion, an e-mobility revolution. With this brief overview, and I might have missed a few things because we are also on short of time. So I'd like to wrap this up by thanking everybody and for their patient listening and participation, and particularly the panelists for their important contributions. So having said that, again, being from our state, like how we normally say, ellarigu ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Guru. Thank you, Goldie. Thank you, Mutawakil. Thank you to Avdesh and Sanjeev also. Thank you, everyone who could join us today.